should have deleted that email the moment I saw it. When I responded to Hollow Ridge Forestry, I thought it was just another routine gig. Surveying remote woodland, collecting soil samples, marking areas for potential logging. Easy money, right? I'd done dozens of these jobs before. But Hollow Ridge wasn't on any map. By the time I realized that, I was already too deep in the woods to turn back. The chopper dropped me off late in the afternoon. A desolate clearing surrounded by towering trees that seemed older than they had any right to be. Just me, my gear, and a two-way radio. The pilot, a wiry man with sharp eyes and scars crisscrossing his knuckles, didn't even shut off the engine as I stepped out. "You sure about this?" he yelled over the roar of the blades. "Yeah," I replied. "Just a week of solitude." He didn't smile or nod. Instead, he thrust a battered old compass into my hand. "Your GPS won't work after sunset," he said. "Use this to get out. And whatever you do, don't answer anything you hear at night." Before I could ask what he meant, the helicopter was already lifting off, leaving me alone in the silence. The first day passed without incident, but something felt off. The trees here weren't normal. They twisted unnaturally, their roots coiling like snakes beneath layers of moss. Some species looked alien, unlike anything native to Appalachia. As I ventured deeper, I stumbled across strange signs, bones scattered where no large animals should roam. Elk skulls perched high in branches, rib cages split open and arranged neatly along winding trails. By sundown, my GPS flickered and died. That night, lying in my tent, I heard it. Not footsteps, but mimicry. A soft shuffling sound, like bare feet brushing against dry leaves. Then silence. And then, impossibly, my own voice whispered from the darkness. "Hello?" My blood froze. It came again, closer this time. Perfectly mimicked. Like a recording, played back to me. I gripped my hatchet tightly, refusing to respond. After what felt like an eternity, the noise faded. I didn't sleep. Each day blurred into the next, marked only by increasing dread. The forest warped around me. My boot prints appeared miles away from where I'd been. Shadows moved when nothing stirred. Whispers echoed faintly during daylight hours, always just out of reach. On the fifth night, the voices returned. This time, it wasn't just mine. It was my mother's, my father's, friends long gone. Voices pleading, crying, begging. "Help me. It hurts. Please, come see." I bit down so hard I tasted blood, forcing myself to stay still. Then, outside my tent, close enough to feel its breath, came a new voice. A chilling chorus that seeped directly into my mind. "We see you." I broke camp before dawn, abandoning everything but the essentials. I ran faster than I ever had before, ignoring the contract, the samples, everything. But the forest fought back. Trees bent at impossible angles, blocking my path. The sky remained a sickly gray, refusing to brighten. The compass spun wildly in my hand, useless now. Around noon, I reached a clearing. In the center stood a figure, tall, impossibly thin, with elongated limbs ending in needle-like fingers. Its face stretched unnaturally, skin rippling as though alive, and it smiled. Not with its mouth, but with its entire being. A voice invaded my thoughts, cold and commanding. "You are leaving." I nodded frantically, stumbling backward before turning and sprinting blindly through the trees. Somehow, I made it to the extraction point. The helicopter waited, rotors spinning. The pilot didn't speak as I climbed aboard, shaking uncontrollably. We lifted off, the dense canopy swallowing the forest below. Only then did I glance back. Dozens of figures stood at the edge of the tree line, watching silently. Not chasing, not waving, just watching. The pilot must have seen them too. His knuckles whitened on the controls. After several minutes of tense silence, He finally spoke. "You didn't answer them, did you?" I shook my head. He nodded, visibly relieved. "Good." Then, quieter. "They don't like it when you answer." Aftermath. I never went back. The paycheck arrived a week later, but Hollow Ridge Forestry vanished overnight. No website, no records, no trace. Yet the compass remains. It doesn't point north anymore. Sometimes, in the dead of night, it spins wildly, as if searching for something beyond comprehension. And sometimes, I hear whispers again. I first noticed it yesterday morning. Alone in bed, I woke up tangled in the sheets, feeling constricted by their weight. My hand, clammy and trembling, reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up. 4:34 a.m. In the distance, I could hear the faint hum of the shower running in the guest bathroom, accompanied by a low, melodic tune sung softly by a man's voice. Tom, my boyfriend of 4 years, had taken to getting ready for work in the guest bathroom recently, claiming he didn't want to disturb my sleep. But it never worked. Every time he left the bed, I felt his absence immediately, not from the creak of the mattress or the sound of his footsteps, but from the void he left behind. That's what woke me this time. The emptiness. After checking the time, I went to set my phone back down when something strange caught my attention. The light from the screen shone through my fingers. At first, I thought it was just an optical illusion, a trick of the darkness mixed with the brightness of the screen. Shaking off the unease, I held the phone closer to inspect my hand again. Slowly, I traced the silhouette of my wrist, palm, and finally my fingertips. And there, glowing faintly through the outline of my translucent fingers, was the image of Tom and me smiling back at me from my lock screen. My heart skipped a beat. I dropped the phone and fumbled for the lamp, flicking it on as panic bubbled inside me. Just as the room filled with light, the front door slammed shut downstairs, startling me. Normally, Tom would say goodbye before leaving, but today, nothing. Pushing aside the nagging thought, I stared down at my hands in the harsh glow of the bedside lamp. They weren't entirely mine anymore. The tips of my fingers were completely transparent. For the rest of the day, I obsessed over this bizarre discovery. I scoured the internet for answers, finding only fictional tales of people fading away. Fear paralyzed me. What if I told someone? Would they think I was losing my mind? Lock me away? Besides, who could I even talk to? Since Tom and I got together, my social circle had dwindled. Everyone seemed to drift away, making excuses not to stay in touch. Tom came home shortly after 2 p.m., plopping into our worn-out maroon armchair from the 90s. Without so much as a greeting, he slipped on his gaming headset and dove into another round of his favorite war game. Normally, he'd at least say hello. But today, silence. By then, my entire hands had vanished, though I could still feel them shaking uncontrollably as I applied makeup for my shift at the restaurant, a small family-owned steakhouse where I worked part-time. Before heading out, I stood in the living room, watching him tap away furiously at his controller. Summoning my courage, I asked loudly enough for him to hear over the noise, "Do you notice anything different about me today?" He glanced at me briefly out of the corner of his eye. "No," he muttered dismissively before returning to his game. How could he not see it? Was I truly going insane? Fighting back tears, I kissed his cheek and left for work, careful not to block his view of the TV. The dinner rush was chaotic, as usual. The dining room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, servers weaving between tables like choreographed dancers. No one seemed to notice or care that my hands were gone. As I carried a tray laden with steaming steaks and crab legs to a table, I nearly dropped everything. Setting the plate down too hard, I apologized profusely, my gaze fixed on the horrifying sight before me. My forearms had disappeared now, leaving only a ghostly haze where my arms should have been. Panic surged through me as I retreated to the kitchen, narrowly avoiding being bowled over by another server rushing out with a sizzling platter. Heart pounding I stumbled into the employee restroom and locked the door behind me. Leaning against the sink, I tried desperately to steady my breathing. Tears streamed down my face as questions swirled in my mind. Why am I here? Does anyone even notice I'm fading? Do I matter at all? When I finally mustered the courage to look in the mirror, I saw that my entire body was beginning to blur, becoming less solid with each passing second. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to leave. Grabbing my things, I bolted out of the restaurant without saying a word to anyone. Not a single coworker stopped me. No texts, no calls. It was eerie, but I pushed the thought aside. After all, I was disappearing. When I got home, I found Tom passed out in the armchair, his headset askew and snoring softly. Exhausted, I dragged myself to the shower. As the hot water cascaded over me, I realized with mounting dread that my feet were gone too. I sat under the spray until the water turned cold, unable to move, unable to think clearly. Eventually, I crawled into bed, naked and shivering, staring blankly at the space where my body used to be. Morning came silently, almost peacefully. Tom hadn't joined me in bed. Everything felt eerily still. My body was completely gone now, along with the edges of my surroundings. The world around me began to dissolve, fading into a quiet nothingness. It's strange how soothing the silence feels now. Scuba diving had always been one of my life's greatest dreams. Swimming alongside marine life in the vast ocean felt like something out of a childhood fantasy, a dream that never left me, offering comfort when everything else seemed uncertain. So, when my brother-in-law offered me the chance to join him on an expedition, I didn't hesitate. Looking back now, I wish I'd waited and gone on my own terms. But hindsight is cruel. We rarely see the forest for the trees. The trip was set in a secluded coastal area, far from tourist hotspots. Perfect for someone like me who wanted to avoid noisy crowds bragging about their nth dive or how deep they'd gone. This place wasn't typical for tours, but our guide assured us it was safe and breathtakingly beautiful. My brother-in-law, Alex, mentioned that his friends couldn't stop raving about this spot after their visits. Their enthusiasm only fueled my excitement. On the pier, we were handed waivers, standard paperwork for such trips. Neither Alex nor I bothered reading them before signing. We were joined by 3 other divers, all equally eager but content to keep to themselves, which suited me just fine. As the boat sped toward our destination, I soaked in every moment. The salty breeze, the rhythmic splash of waves against the hull, and the anticipation buzzing through the air. It felt like being a kid again, chasing a long-held dream. After about 30 minutes, we arrived at the dive site. The instructor and her assistant helped us gear up. I was clueless about most of the equipment, the oxygen tanks, the wetsuit, but the instructor was patient and guided me through it all. She gave us a quick tutorial on using the gear and what to expect underwater. Though this was my first time diving, I already knew the basics from watching countless videos, so I listened intently anyway, not wanting to miss anything crucial. Alex, an experienced diver thanks to previous outings with my sister, reassured me and helped me adjust to the experience. When it came time to enter the water, we followed instructions, leaning backward off the boat and turning once submerged. I let the others go first, then took a deep breath and fell back into the ocean. For a brief second, disorientation gripped me as the world flipped upside down. Underwater, panic bubbled inside me until Alex signaled a thumbs up, letting me know I was okay. Slowly, I began swimming, marveling at the cool water enveloping me and the vibrant scene before me. Schools of fish darted past, and the coral reefs shimmered with colors I'd only seen in documentaries. It was pure magic. I was living my dream. The assistant tapped my shoulder and gestured for me to follow. Our goal was a specific spot where the seafloor dropped off dramatically, creating what the guide described as one of the most awe-inspiring sights. I remembered her mentioning it on the boat, and I eagerly swam along with the group. As we approached the drop-off, the scenery, shifted. The bright blues faded into darker hues, and the lively coral gave way to barren sand. A chill crept over me, not just because the temperature dropped slightly, but because the absence of marine life felt eerie. There were no fish here, no movement, except for us. Even Alex looked uneasy, glancing repeatedly back toward where we'd come from. When I turned, the assistant gave me a reassuring thumbs up. I returned the gesture and pressed on. Finally, we reached the edge of the drop-off. Words can't describe the sight before me. The sandy bottom simply vanished into the abyss below. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying. We floated there, taking it all in, but something still felt off. No schools of fish swam nearby. No curious creatures peeked out from the shadows. And then I noticed it, a shape moving in the gloom, below. Darker than the surrounding darkness, it moved faster than I could track. Instinctively, I began swimming backward, thinking it might be a shark or some other predator. The three tourists swam closer to the edge, drawn by curiosity, while the instructor and assistant stayed close behind. Then, chaos erupted. Something shot up from the depths, a massive black tentacle, and snatched one of the divers, dragging him down into the void. Panic spread instantly. Another tentacle emerged, grabbing a second diver by the foot. Her screams released a cloud of bubbles. As she too was pulled under, I froze for a split second before adrenaline kicked in. Frantically, I swam toward shallower waters, desperate to escape whatever lurked below. Behind me, another tentacle lashed out, seizing the instructor instead of me. She struggled briefly, before disappearing into the abyss. That's when I felt something grab my leg. I stopped mid-stroke and glanced down. It was the assistant, trying to drag me back toward the drop-off. Fear surged through me. I kicked violently, releasing a burst of bubbles, and managed to break free just as another tentacle wrapped around his ankle. His eyes widened in terror as he was yanked downward, leaving me alone in the water. With renewed determination, I swam for my life. Reaching the shallows, I surfaced, choking on seawater and flailing my arms, hoping someone would see me. That's when I heard it. A deep, rumbling vibration emanating from beneath the waves. Turning back, I saw the ocean bulging unnaturally, straining to contain whatever monstrous thing was rising from the depths. I swam for shore with every ounce of strength I had. Unbuckling the oxygen tank to move faster, I pushed myself forward, despite exhaustion. Just as I thought I might make it, a colossal wave surged up, lifting me high into the air before slamming me back down. Tossed around in the churning water, I fought to stay conscious but eventually succumbed to the chaos. When I woke up, I was washed ashore on a distant beach, miles away from where we'd started. Locals found me and asked what happened. I tried, explaining, but they seemed confused. This stretch of coastline was over 40 miles from our original dive site. Exhausted and traumatized, I realized I'd narrowly escaped something unimaginable. Whatever dwelled in those depths, it hadn't let me go without a fight.